Welcome to the BearDown podcast presented by Arizona Athletics. I'm Matt Enzer, joined here by the Dean of Arizona head coaches, Dave Rubio, head coach of Arizona Volleyball, also Pac-12's active winningest volleyball coach. Dave, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. It's an honor to be here.
Absolutely, and it's fun to have you here. You're about just starting conference play this year, but I want, as we always do with this, start back in the past a little bit, get a little bit of your story. One thing that I think is very interesting about your genesis here and your start here at Arizona was being here at what was deemed the golden era of coaches, where when you started here under the same roof in McHale, you had the likes of Dick Tomey, Lute Olson, Mike Candrea, Rick LaRose, Jerry Kindle, Frank Bush. What was it like having the opportunity to really rub shoulders with all those Hall of Fame coaches?
You know, I was swimming in the deep end of the pool at that time. I was a young, 32 years old, just coming from Division II at Cal State Bakersfield, and really didn't have any exposure to this level of athletics and kind of what it took to win. And I really didn't realize the type of coaches and the quality of coaches that were here only until a few years as I got into it, all the success that they had and the national championships that they were winning. And did I really feel like it was a great opportunity for me to sit and watch practices and talk to those coaches and learn from them through osmosis and what they were saying to the press, and then watching them communicate with those players. So it was a great opportunity for me to learn quite a bit from that group. It was a wonderful time during that era for me.
Can you just extract maybe an item per one of those coaches, or something that you took away with you, or still with you from a sample of those Hall of Fame coaches?
We were always on the back end of practice with Lute. Lute would finish practice, and he'd always would go over 10 to 20 minutes, and I would be standing on the sidelines and with my team. But I would be watching Lute really closely and scrutinizing kind of how he communicated and how he communicated with his players, and how his staff really interacted with the players and how organized they were. And so it was a great experience for me to kind of see obviously one of the great basketball coaches of all time kind of do their business on a day-to-day basis. And so I learned quite a bit just watching.
How about from Mike Candrea or from Dick Tomey or Frank Bush or some of the other coaches?
Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to speak with Mike a lot, but when we did, we would always talk shop. And for Mike, it was less about the X's and O's and more about just the interpersonal relationships and how to try to connect with the players, try to get the most out of the players through the level of communication that he had with them. And it was, as I've learned now, it's more about building the relationships and trying to build their confidence to get the most out of them and what they want as well. And so watching them, Frank Bush was a master motivator. He was, winning the Pac-12 championships all the time, Coach of the Year so many years in a row, and but he was so good with his players as well in terms of the relationships that he built with them. And so I was really fortunate to be a young guy with, surrounded by all those great coaching minds.
So I'm going to test your memory a little bit here, Dave. Do you remember your first match as head coach at Arizona?
Oh, gosh.
I can give you a little help here.
Either we were on the road at Fresno State, I think, and I'm not sure if that was the first match, but I think that was one of the first matches that we played.
September 4th, 1992, playing number 20 Pepperdine.
Okay.
Ranked top 20. I think you guys you're in Stockton, so you're probably in Pacific.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay.
But your first win as a Wildcat head coach was a top 25 victory, 3-0. You swept Pepperdine.
Is that right?
That was
I don't even remember
4th,
that.
1992.
You would think that would stand out in my bad memory, but yeah, I don't remember that. That's great.
So, and then obviously, year one, you took over a winless program. You come in year one, 10-17, 4-14 in the Pac-12. But I think what stands out to me and a lot of Wildcat fans was how immediate that turnaround really sped up in your second year. Because in year two, Dave, in '93, you go 20-11, 11-7 in the Pac-12, and a Sweet 16 in 1993. What did you see as that catalyst, as it were, of that turnaround happening like that? Year two, Sweet 16, 20 wins.
Well, the talent was here. I was fortunate to walk in to a program where the previous coaching staff had done a really good job of recruiting top-level talent, and it was just a matter of trying to get everybody together and really, and in a sense, get along better. That was a really interesting. A lot of those players are really close friends now, but at the time, there was a tremendous amount of just types of relationships that you wouldn't want to be a part of. Rita being my assistant coach, current assistant, being part of that era, but it was a disenfranchised group in a lot of ways. But my goal was to try to bring them together, and at the end of the day, those guys hated losing more than they disliked each other. And that's really because they really didn't like each other, but they hated losing more. And so I was just able to kind of bring them together enough to get enough success out of them.
So a highlight of that season, among many highlights, we go back to November 7th, 1993 in McHale. Arizona in 5 sets beats number 1 UCLA. As you mentioned, Rita Stubbs is on that team. Right. Barb Bell, Melissa Ferris, and also Heidi would go on to be Brewski.
Right.
Now, there was a report that the court was stormed after that win. Do you remember that? And do you remember the same report that said that both Teddy Brewski and Sed Dempsey rushed the court?
Right. I remember that match as if it was yesterday. That was UCLA was a little flat coming in, and they had one of the greatest players, Annette Buckner, on that team as well. And when we won that game, if we were down or like 13-11 in the 5th set, and that's back when it was side-out scoring. And we were able to, pull off the win and score 4 straight points. And I remember Sed Dempsey coming on the floor. I remember Rocky LaRose being there, and Teddy. And the other person who was on that team that's gone on to make great achievements is Stephanie Remp, who is now obviously I'm not sure if she's the deputy senior women's administrator or vice president. I'm not sure what the title is at LSU, but she's gone on and doing great things as well.
So that 1993 season, as we talked about, was really a catalyst for your sustained run for much of Arizona. We can go through the hero numbers, as it were. It vaulted you towards the run of 20 NCAA tournaments, 8 Swiss 16s, 4 Elite 8s, and of course an appearance in the 2001 Final Four. That 2001 season, obviously very magical in program history. And going back and looking at it, that postseason run was pretty impressive. I went back and checked. You go right out of the gates. Four wins, scored 12-3. You only lost 3 sets in those first 4 wins. When you think back to that magical run you had of that 2001 season, Dave, what stands out to you? What made that team that good at that time?
Well, we had an amazing leader, Dana Burkholder, who was one of the greatest to ever put on a uniform here in the most important position, the setting position. And that was the very first year of Raleigh scoring too, so that was a change in the Raleigh score. But we had her as a first-team All-American. We had Jill Talbot, who played opposite her, who was a first-team All-American. And then we had an amazing cast of players around them. And so it was a group of young ladies that had enough talent, but really was led by one person that kind of took our team and took it to a completely different level. We had the requisite level of talent. It wasn't, really that much different than the top level teams, but because of that one person, she was the one that really was the catalyst. Very similar to what we have right now, actually. I mean, you got Kamali Hiopo, who's very similar to Dana in a different position in a libero position, but equally as important at this point in the evolution of the game and the way it is. But and we have similar talent to that team. We're just really young, like that team was back in 1998-99.
And so we flash forward, 2018, another milestone win for you, Dave. September 14, 2018, a sweep of New Mexico State for win number 500, a sweep of a team that had your brother on staff, and obviously a memorable night for you, I'm sure. What's the one memory you remember of that 500th win against your brother?
We played New Mexico State pretty regularly, and I think that anytime you win, it could be memorable. But it's just one of a win. You're so task oriented as a head coach, you don't really think about too many. One being 500 and one being 250. You're just kind of ready to move on and then look at the next one. Little did I know that it was 500. Someone was telling me, it's like, I think in that match, like, Dave, this if you win is your number 500. So I'm like, really? So I think for all as head coaches, we're just so focused on what you're gonna have to do next.
And it's, again, one of your many milestone wins, Dave. You're currently top 15 in the history of NCAA women's volleyball, 700 career wins, nearly 700 career wins, both from your time at Long Beach and here. Now, about those wins, sweeps versus five setters. How do we feel about a nice, clean, easy sweep versus a five-setter thriller?
You kind of have to break it into two different categories with this and the five setters. There's the five setters that you feel like they should have never been in 5 sets, that you should have taken care of business in 3 or 4, and then there's the ones that you're happy that you got to the 5 sets, and then you're rolling the dice and hoping that you're going to be able to pull off the upset or pull off a match maybe that you shouldn't have won. But I think the one that you get most anxious about and the one that you get the pit at the bottom of your stomach is the one that you should have taken care of business in 3 or 4, and now you find yourself in the 5th set. That's happened as many times as the ones that we've been able to be in a 5th set and be fortunate to be in a 5th set. But they're always, they're the kind that you hate being in. This year we've had our fair share of being in 5 setters. It's been really good for our team. I hate being in them. It's like being in the dentist chair and getting your tooth drilled on again without Novocaine. But at the end of the day, it's really good for your team to kind of experience those kind of moments and that kind of adversity. It helps build your team and the chemistry of your team and the toughness of your team. But you hate it as a coach.
Would it surprise you if I told you you've had 154 trips to the dentist as the head coach at Arizona Volleyball?
I'm not sure if that's a good stat or not.
But you touched a little bit about this earlier. I'm curious to know your thoughts on how the game has changed through your 30 seasons. You look at those year 1, 92, 93 to now here in 2021. Right. How has the game of women's volleyball at the college level changed during your tenure?
Well, there's probably 3 different areas you can point to. One is the most dramatic is the scoring system. When the scoring system switched from side out to rally score, and then they added the libero position, that really leveled the playing field. And so there was less have and have-nots, and that really brought the middle in. I mean, the teams from the top to bottom more in the middle. And so that was the one big change. The other big change is the advent, I think, that's happened with all collegiate sports, all sports, is a youth sport dynamic that's gone on from the time that I got hired all the way to where we see it now, which is there's just so many more kids playing sports. With the population base being almost 60% being in the central time zone and the eastern time zone, you're seeing a lot more of those players now, kids playing volleyball in those 2 time zones. And so you see just a dramatic increase in the number of participants in volleyball, and as a result you get more kids playing, and then you got more athletes playing, and then what's happened is the Midwest and the East Coast now is equally as good as any team in the West Coast. And so you see that dynamic change quite a bit. And the last one is, the last significant one I think has happened, is just the athletes and the quality of athlete that you're getting. They're more sophisticated now. They're growing up with playing a lot more volleyball than they did back when I first got hired. They're much more educated. You had to be a much better communicator with those players than you did in the past. And so those 3 things I think have really changed the dynamic of the sport from the time that I started in the 90s to where I am right now.
As a byproduct of that influx of talent, the growth of international prospects, talents. I mean, look at this year's roster, Dave. Right. You have Germany, you have Mexico, you have Turkey, you have a strong international flavor to it.
Right. Part for us is that they've been able to relax the rules a little bit for us to get international players. So for us, for decades, it was really difficult for us to get an international player that was good enough and could pass the TOEFL. Only within the last couple of years have they been able to find different avenues for them to get in that doesn't necessarily bypass the TOEFL, but we can take other tests to be able to get them in. So that's really helped out. But from a recruiting standpoint, the international players have really, one, they want to come to the United States. We're one of the few places in the world where you can, really get a great education and go to school for free. And then the other part of it is we can get a better recruit sometimes that'll come to Arizona from an international school from overseas than we can domestically. I hate to say that, but the way the landscape is kind of unfolding for us at this particular time, that's the case.
So it's all a little bit coming full circle for you now, and we're going to touch about this to end it with Olivia Rubio joining beach volleyball. But when I talk about Rubio's playing volleyball, I want to know, what is the Coach Rubio scout on Dave Rubio, the all-conference player at Northridge? What were you like as a player, Dave?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, I say this tongue in cheek, but I played in an era where little Asian guys could play volleyball. Now that's not the case. I mean, if you see any collegiate volleyball now, I mean, it's 6'5", 6'6", 6'9". I mean, I wouldn't even be able to set, which is I was a setter back in those days. I might be able to play libero, but the game has really changed significantly, from the time that I played back in the mid-'70s, late '70s to where it is now. Very much like the evolution of women's volleyball from the time that I started coaching. But Olivia is in a great place. She's playing for a terrific coach. I feel like she's fortunate to be here. I said she's earned her way on here, so that there was no influence by me on that. I mean, I would never do that, but I'm very proud of how she conducts her life on a day-to-day basis. Very task-oriented. It's really smart, much smarter than her dad, much more athletic than I ever was. So
her play a different position, right? She's
that's right.
To
So
Dave the setter.
That's right. So, but she's, it's a difference. I'm really proud of the person that she's become more than anything.
What does it mean to you to have your daughter play at Arizona, a place where you've now 30th season coaching?
It's funny is that I think as head coaches we're so down the rabbit hole during the season, which is I am right now. But the time that I really appreciate it is when I'm in the locker room and I'm talking to the team, and then she's coming in from beach practice and I get a chance to see her, or she'll stop by the office and she goes, "Hey, what kind of snacks do you have? I can have. I'm really hungry." I really appreciate those moments, and I'm glad that she's here. And you think that they're going to be kids, for all those parents, you think your kid's going to be kids forever, and the reality is that, here Olivia is just, 5-6 years ago, she was just this little teenager, barely becoming a teenager. Now, here she is, a full-fledged adult, and you just don't realize how quickly that time passes. And I think as parents, often take it for granted that it's going to be kids forever, and that's not the reality. I got two twins. I got twins that are entering high school, and we're going to be empty nesters here before you know it, so, but I appreciate her being here.
Well, I know a lot of the fans are looking forward to seeing her play in beach volleyball season this spring, but we're also looking forward to the rest of your 2021 season, Dave. Thanks for taking your time out today, and best of luck for the rest of the season.
I appreciate it, Matt. It's great being here, and I love being a Wildcat, and it's been an honor to be here for this long.